somewhere warm and still, and nothing in the next hour and a half is going to ask anything of you. There is no journey in this one. Nobody is taken anywhere. Nothing is coming. And by the end, we will be back exactly where we started. What there is instead is a ship, a very large ship, a long way from anywhere, moving through the dark with tens of thousands of people asleep inside it. And you have the night watch, which means you walk it end to end and check that everything is as it should be, and always is. That is the entire job. I should say at the start that nothing in this is going to build to anything. There is no reveal at the end, and no reason to stay awake for it. If you drift off somewhere around the enginarium, you will have missed nothing, because there is nothing to miss. That is not me being modest about the story, it is the actual shape of the thing. A night watch aboard a working vessel is 4 hours of confirming that a very large number of small arrangements are all still holding, and the entire value of it lies in the fact that they are. So settle in properly. Let the pillow take the weight of your head. We have a long, quiet walk ahead of us, and the only thing at the end of it is your own bunk. The ship is bigger than you can hold in your head, and everybody aboard gives up trying quite early on. It carries tens of thousands of people. It has manufactories in it, and barracks, and chapels, and farms, and enough living quarters to house a small town, because that is what it is, a town that happens to be moving. There are districts aboard this vessel that you have never visited, and never will, in a working life of 40 years. And there are people asleep tonight 4 decks under your feet, whose names you will never learn. And the shape of it is not really a shape you would recognize as a ship. From outside, it is closer to a cathedral that somebody has laid on its side and attached engines to. Kilometers of Gothic buttressing, spires that serve no aerodynamic purpose whatsoever, because there is no air out here to be aerodynamic in, and a hull thick enough that the distinction between vessel and fortress has stopped meaning very much. Inside, the impression is not of being on a ship at all. It is of being inside a building with unusually thick weather. Most of the crew go their whole lives without once seeing the outside of it, and when they picture home, they picture a corridor. Your job has a name, but the name does not matter much. You walk, you check, you have a lamp and a list, and a route that takes about 4 hours if nothing needs looking at. And in 7 years, nothing has ever needed looking at. This is not a complaint. A ship where the night watch finds something is a ship in serious trouble, and every single person aboard would far rather you spent your entire career being bored. The list is a formality, and everybody knows it. 61 entries, most of them pressure readings and hatch states, and you could recite the expected value of every one of them in your sleep, and frequently do. But you take the readings anyway, honestly, because the one thing everybody aboard understands about this job is that it works precisely because nobody has ever decided to stop bothering. Somewhere in the ship's history, there is almost certainly a night when it mattered. Nobody knows which night it was. It is not in any account you have access to. It is simply the reason the post exists, and the reason nobody has ever suggested it does not need to. You start where you sleep, because everybody starts where they sleep. Your bunk is one of 60 in a compartment that was built for 40, and at this hour, most of them are full. And the sound of 50-odd people breathing in a metal room is one of the most ordinary sounds in the Imperium, and one of the least often described. You put your boots on in the dark, by feel, the way you have done 10,000 times. Somebody 2 bunks down says something in their sleep. You do not wake anybody. It is a skill. There are personal things bolted, tied, and wedged into every available space around each bunk, because storage is the currency of a berthing compartment. A picture of somewhere nobody in this compartment has ever been. A tin with something in it. A small shrine the size of your palm, screwed to the frame at head height, which about half the compartment has and nobody comments on. All of it lashed down out of habit rather than necessity. Nothing has shifted in years. But you lash it anyway, because your parents did, and because the one thing a Voidborn will not do is leave something loose. And then the corridor, and this is where the watch really starts. The night cycle on a ship this size does not mean darkness. It means the lumens drop to about 1/3 and go red, so that the people who have to be awake can see without waking the people who do not. The whole vessel goes the color of a banked fire. It happens at the same moment every cycle, across every deck, and if you are somewhere with a long sight line when it happens, you can watch it run away from you down a corridor 1/2 kilometer long. It is a genuinely beautiful thing to watch, that changeover, and nobody aboard would ever describe it that way out loud. 1/2 kilometer of corridor going from working amber to banked red in a wave, because the circuits switch in sequence rather than all at once, and it takes about 4 seconds to run the length of the deck. You have timed it. Everybody who walks nights has timed it. It is the sort of small, private observation a person accumulates when their job is to be awake in a place designed for other people to be asleep in. And there are hundreds of them, and none of them are in any manual. The first thing anybody notices about a voidship, and the last thing they stop noticing, is the sound. It never stops. Somewhere below everything else, there is the note of the plasma drives, so low that you feel it in your back teeth rather than hear it, and it has been running without a pause since long before you were born. On top of that, there is the air handling, and the water in the pipes, and the small metallic complaints of a structure this size holding itself together. Nobody aboard calls it noise. It is simply what the world sounds like. People who transfer aboard from a planet cannot sleep for the first month, and then they can, and then if they ever go back planetside, they cannot sleep there either, because it is too quiet, and the silence has an edge to it that they were not expecting. There is a word for that among ship crews, and it is not a kind one, and everybody who has been aboard long enough uses it about themselves eventually. The sound of the ship is not something you get used to. It is something that gets into the part of you that decides whether you are safe, and once it is in there, it does not come out. Your route takes you through the mess first, which is never entirely empty and never entirely full. There is always somebody eating at the wrong hour, because on a ship this size, there is no right hour. The watches overlap so completely that somewhere aboard it is always the middle of somebody's afternoon. Two people are playing something with counters at the far end and have clearly been playing it for hours. The cook nods at you. You nod back. Neither of you says anything, because there is nothing that needs saying, and there has not been for years. The food is not good, and it is not the point. What the mess actually provides is the only room on the vessel where you can sit down without a reason. Everywhere else aboard, you are somewhere because your duty put you there. Here, you are just here, and can be for as long as you like, and that turns out to matter enormously over a 40-year posting. The counters game at the far table has rules that were established before either of the current players was born, and has been running continuously, with substitutions, for something like a century, and both of them would find it very strange to be told that was remarkable. Past the mess is the purser's territory, and it is shut at this hour, which is the only reason you can walk through it without a conversation. Every single object aboard this vessel that is not bolted down belongs, on paper, to a store, and every store has somebody whose life is the ledger for it. Boots, wire, lamp oil, thread, replacement gaskets in 11 sizes, of which 2 have been unobtainable since before you were born, and are therefore worth more than anything else in the compartment. The purser's people are not popular, and they do not expect to be. They are the reason the ship still has things, 40 years into a posting, with no prospect of resupply for another 11 weeks, and everybody who has ever needed something at short notice has learned exactly how much politeness costs and exactly how much it buys. What nobody outside the stores understands is that the purser's real job is not issuing, it is forecasting. Somebody has to decide, 11 weeks out from anywhere, how much of everything the ship will need, and be wrong in the safe direction every time for decades. Get it wrong the other way once, and there is no supplier, no requisition, and no alternative of any kind. There is simply a shortage aboard a sealed vessel for as long as the transit lasts. The current purser has been wrong twice in 30 years, and both times it was thread, and she has apparently never entirely forgiven herself for either, and everybody who knows the story finds it slightly unbearable. Then the habitation decks, and this is the part of the ship that surprises people who have never served. It is not barracks, it is housing. There are families here. There are compartments that have been handed down, a bulkhead with 3 generations of names scratched into the paint beside the door, curtains made from something that was cargo once. Somebody has hung a line across a passage, and there is washing on it, which is technically against about 4 regulations, and no officer aboard would dream of saying so. The regulations, if anybody consulted them, would have a great deal to say about all of this. There are rules about modification of compartments, about unauthorized structures in passageways, about the transfer of berthing rights. They were written by an authority that has never been aboard, for a vessel it has never seen, and they are observed in the way that a very old treaty is observed. Everybody knows the text. Nobody has repudiated it, and the actual arrangement on the ground is something else entirely that both sides prefer. Children are born on this ship. That is the thing that takes the longest to sit properly in the mind of anyone who came aboard from a planet. Not brought aboard, born here, in a compartment, 4 decks down, with a med servitor in attendance and the drives humming through the floor, and they will take their first steps in a corridor and learn to read from a maintenance stencil and get their first posting at 14 without ever having stood on anything that was not this vessel. They will learn things you had to be taught and know things nobody taught them, which handhold to take when the drives change note, how to tell the deck you are on by the sound of your own footsteps, the specific reason you never leave a hatch on the latch, which no adult will explain properly, and every child aboard knows by 6. They are not being raised to be crew. They already are crew in every way that matters, several years before anybody gives them a posting, and the posting, when it comes, is a formality that surprises nobody. There is a schoolroom on the 11th deck, and it is one of the strangest rooms aboard. 30 children of wildly different ages, taught together by whoever the ship can spare, from materials that are 400 years old and have been copied by hand more than once. They learn to read from maintenance stencils, because those are the letters that exist in quantity. They learn arithmetic from stores manifests. There is a single battered picture book of planet-side animals, which every child aboard for 6 generations has looked at, and which several of them, over the years, have carefully repaired. Not one of them has ever seen an animal larger than a rat. They know exactly what a horse looks like, and have no functioning sense of how big one is. They are taught the catechisms too, and the drills, and what to do if a hatch alarm sounds on their deck, and they learn all of that faster and better than the letters, because it is manifestly about them. A child aboard understands by 5 that the ship is the only thing between them and something they have never seen and cannot picture. It does not frighten them. It is simply the arrangement, the way weather is an arrangement for a planet-side child, and the ones who transfer in later in life never quite acquire that calm, and are gently and permanently marked out by its absence. These are the void-born, and they are not simply people who travel. They are the product of many generations living in the dark between worlds, and it shows. They are different from you in ways that are hard to point at and impossible to miss. They move through the ship without ever appearing to think about where they are going. They are unbothered by things that unsettle everybody else, and quietly superstitious about things nobody from a planet would even notice. And a great many of them will live an entire life and die without once seeing the outside of the hull. There is a particular thing the void-born do which you have watched for years and never managed to learn. They always know exactly which way is for. Always, instantly, anywhere aboard, in the dark, without landmarks, in a compartment they have never entered. Ask one how, and they will look genuinely puzzled and say something unhelpful about the drives. It is not mystical. It is presumably some accumulation of vibration and habit laid down before they could walk. But you came aboard at 19, and you have been here 23 years, and you still have to think about it, and they can see you thinking, and they are much too polite to say anything. There is a market on the 8th deck, in a space that was designed as a cargo transfer hall, and has not been used for cargo in anybody's memory. Nobody authorized it. It simply happened, the way markets do, and by now it has stalls with names. People trade things they have made, things they have grown, things that came aboard 40 years ago and have been circulating ever since. There is no coin as such. There is an extremely complicated understanding of what is worth what, which everybody aboard has absorbed, and nobody could explain to an outsider. What gets traded is mostly time and skill rather than objects. Somebody will resole your boots. Somebody else keeps a still that everybody, including the officers, knows about. There is a woman on the 8th deck who repairs the small personal shrines and does it beautifully, and will not accept anything for it, and has therefore accumulated an enormous and entirely unspoken amount of credit with about 400 people. That is how the economy actually works. The stalls are the visible part. The real thing is a web of obligations several generations deep that nobody has ever written down, and everybody could recite the relevant portion of. There are passengers aboard, which surprises people who think of a warship as containing only crew. Not many, and never for long by the standards of a transit. But a vessel going where this one is going is the only way for anybody else to get there either. So there are merchant guilders with cargo, and a small party of pilgrims who have been saving for this for most of their adult lives, and an administratum functionary traveling to a posting who has been visibly unhappy since the day of embarkation. They have their own section, better appointed than yours, and they are not permitted anywhere near the working decks. You pass their passage on the route and check the seal. Through the hatch, you can hear somebody playing something stringed badly at 3 in the morning, which means they cannot sleep either. And for a moment, the two of you have more in common than either would guess. The crew are polite to passengers and quietly regard them as weather. Something that arrives, is endured, and departs, and about which there is no point having strong opinions. The pilgrims will not see anything of this vessel except a corridor, a bunk room, and a chapel, and will talk about the voyage for the rest of their lives. The chapel is always open, and there is always somebody in it. That is not a rule. It is simply what happens on a vessel where several thousand people work rotating watches, and each of them, sooner or later, has an hour they do not know what to do with. It is a real chapel, stone-clad over the iron, with a vaulted ceiling that somebody shipped the materials for at enormous expense, and candles, and the smell of them, and the sound of the drives coming up through the floor underneath all of it. The candles are the extravagance. Everything else aboard is accounted for to a decimal place, and the chapel burns real wax continuously, and no quartermaster in the vessel's history has ever raised it. There was presumably a decision about that once. It is not in any record anybody has looked at. It has simply become one of the fixed facts of the ship, like the water discipline and the way the lumens change. And if a new officer ever queried it, the answer would not be an argument. It would be a silence from everybody until the subject changed. And the ship's dead go out through a hatch on the lower aft quarter. There is a service for it, and it is well attended, and it is the only time most of the crew ever sees the outside of the vessel, because the hatch has a port beside it, and during a committal the shutter comes up. You have been to 11. You will be at more. The body goes out wrapped and weighted, and it does not fall, because there is nothing to fall toward, and it simply keeps going in the direction it was released, at exactly the speed it was released, forever, which is the part that everybody understands and nobody says. Then the shutter comes down and everybody goes back to work. There is a bell rung at a committal, and it is the only bell aboard. It hangs by the hatch. It is very old, and it is rung once by whoever was closest to the person, and then not again until the next time. On a long transit, it can go months without sounding. Everybody aboard, on every deck, knows what it means when it does. It carries through the structure the way everything carries. And there is a moment, ship-wide, where several thousand people who have no idea who died stop for a second and then carry on. Nobody organized that either. Below the chapel is the medicae bay, which is quiet tonight and is not always. 3 wards, a surgery, and a long room at the back that nobody names directly. The chirurgeons aboard are competent and overworked and have seen a very specific range of injuries 10,000 times each. Crush, burn, decompression, the particular things a working ship does to people, and would be completely lost on a planet. There is a smell of counterseptic that gets into the corridor outside, and everybody aboard associates it, permanently and involuntarily, with the worst days of their life. You walk through it briskly. Everybody does. The duty orderly does not look up, which is a courtesy. The long room at the back is for the cases where nothing more is going to be done, and it has 4 beds in it, and it is the quietest place on the vessel. Somebody sits with them. That is not a rostered duty, and it is not in any establishment table, and it happens without fail. There is an understanding aboard, older than anybody currently serving, that nobody goes out alone if the ship can help it. Off-watch crew take turns, strangers mostly. It is the most consistently observed custom on this vessel, and there is not one word about it in any document the Navy has ever issued. Below that, the farms. Every ship this size grows some of what it eats, and the hydroponic decks are the only place aboard where anything is green. They run them on a different cycle from everybody else, so at this hour the grow lumens are at full, and the whole deck is drowned in a hard, white-pink light that is genuinely painful after 4 hours of red corridors. It smells of wet earth and cut stems. People come down here off shift and just stand in it, and nobody has ever needed to explain why. They are also, quietly, the most closely guarded part of the ship after the drives. Not against theft, against failure. A hydroponic deck is a living system, and living systems on a closed vessel are the thing most likely to go wrong, slowly enough that nobody notices until it is serious. So there are people whose entire lives are the health of these trays, and they are unbelievably particular. And when they say a rack is coming down with something, the entire chain of command upward finds time immediately. It is one of the few places aboard where expertise beats rank without anybody having to make it a fight. Water is watched more closely than anything else aboard. Not rationed exactly, but accounted for constantly by people whose entire professional lives are the ship's water, and everybody knows the number without being told it. It is the one thing on a void ship that cannot be improvised, replaced, or done without. And there is a quiet, universal understanding about waste that has nothing to do with regulations and would survive the removal of every officer aboard. There is a mark on the wall in the reclamation bay, chalked over and re-chalked for generations, showing the lowest the reserve has ever been. Nobody living was aboard when it happened. The story attached to it has certainly grown in the telling, and the essential facts are probably true, and the mark is maintained with the same seriousness as anything in the chapel. It is about 11 centimeters from the floor. Every apprentice in the water gang has walked down and shown it in their first week, and it does more for water discipline aboard this vessel than any regulation ever printed. And the air, every breath anybody aboard has taken in the last 200 years has been through the same machinery. There are scrubber decks amidships the size of cathedrals, and the people who work them are regarded correctly as the most important crew on the vessel. There is a joke about it that everybody has heard. There is also a shrine at the entrance to every scrubber hall that is better maintained than most of the chapels, and nobody thinks that is funny at all. And you can tell which watch a person works by how they behave in a scrubber hall. Anybody from the upper decks walks through it the way you would walk through a plant room. The scrubber crews move through it the way a person moves through their own kitchen, and they touch things constantly. A hand on a housing in passing, a palm flat against a duct for a second on the way past, checking temperature and vibration without any conscious thought at all. Nobody teaches that. It accumulates. And after enough years, they will tell you a filter bank is failing 4 days before the instruments agree, and they will be right, and they will be unable to tell you how they knew. And there are trades aboard that exist nowhere in any naval establishment table. A barber, 2 tailors who between them keep 6,000 uniforms serviceable and are therefore untouchable. A man on the 4th deck who mends boots and has mended boots since before you came aboard and will presumably mend boots until he dies. None of these people are rated for what they actually do. Their postings say something else entirely, and their divisional officers have arranged their watch rotations around the real work for generations. And the administratum 4,000 light years away has a document that describes a ship that does not exist. And when this vessel eventually goes into a yard for a proper refit, which happens roughly twice in a working life, The trades are the part everybody worries about. Yard authority looks at the establishment table, sees a ship badly out of alignment with it, and begins correcting things. It has happened before. There is a story aboard about a refit 4 centuries ago, after which the ship reportedly took 11 years to sort itself out again. And that story is told to every newly posted officer within about a month of arrival, extremely politely, by somebody who is arranged to be sitting near them at the time. There are animals aboard, not many and not for company. There is a stock deck adjoining the farms with fowl in it, and something four-legged that the manifest calls cattle, and that a planet-sider would probably dispute, and an unaccounted population of rats that has been aboard longer than any family currently serving. The rats are hunted by an equally unaccounted population of cats, which are technically not aboard at all, appear on no manifest, and are fed by approximately everybody. There was an attempt to remove them 200 years ago. It is spoken of the way you would speak of a famine. The cats are the thing visitors find hardest to believe, and the crew find hardest to explain. There are perhaps 40. They are not owned. They have territories corresponding to no deck plan anybody has ever drawn, preferences about particular people that are taken quite seriously, and a documented tendency to avoid certain sealed sections which the void-born regard as confirmation of something, and everybody else regards as coincidence. When one dies, it gets a committal, not the bell, but a hatch, and somebody to see it done, which on this ship is the whole of what respect consists of. From here the route goes down, and down on a ship means toward the drives, and you feel it before you see anything. The temperature climbs. The note in the deck plating gets lower and stronger until it stops being a sound at all and becomes a pressure. The corridors narrow and stop pretending to be architecture. There are no habitation decks below this point. Nobody lives down here. People work down here in shifts, and then they go back up, and there is a reason for that. The change in the architecture happens over about 3 decks, and it is very deliberate. Up top, everything is finished. Paneling over the structure, stone cladding in the chapel, handrails that somebody shaped. Down here, the ship stops pretending. It is bare frame and bolt heads and pipework that runs where pipework needs to run, rather than where it would look right, and stenciled warnings on every second surface. There is no cruelty in it. It is simply that the parts of a ship people live in, and the parts of a ship that make it go, have different requirements, and nobody has ever wasted a resource pretending otherwise. Time aboard is a decision rather than a fact, and it takes newcomers a while to accept that. There is no day here. There is no sunrise anywhere within several light years, and the ship's cycle is entirely arbitrary. Somebody, at some point in the vessel's history, decided what o'clock it was going to be, and it has been that ever since. And if the ship were to arrive somewhere with a 22-hour day, the crew would simply keep their own time and let the planet get on with it. There is a master chronometer in a sealed case on the bridge, and its readings are carried to every deck, and the maintenance of it is a Mechanicus function surrounded by a certain amount of ceremony. What that produces is a strange and quite beautiful situation. 26,000 people all agreeing, continuously and without difficulty, on a fiction, because the alternative is that nobody knows when anything is. Your watch begins at a time that means nothing anywhere else in the galaxy. Everybody aboard knows exactly when it is. That is the whole of what time has ever been, really. And out here it is just easier to see. The enginarium is not a room. It is a complex, filling many decks, and it is effectively another country inside the ship. Different rules, different language, most of it. The Adeptus Mechanicus hold this territory, and the arrangement is old and completely settled and slightly awkward for everybody. You are permitted here. You are not welcome here. Those are two different things, and the distinction is maintained with great politeness on both sides. The border between the two jurisdictions is not marked, and everybody knows exactly where it is. There is a junction on the 14th deck where the ship's own stencils stop and the Mechanicus stencils begin in a different script, and the deck plating on the far side is maintained to a different standard. Nobody has ever put a line on the floor. Nobody needs to. In 2,000 years, the arrangement has been renegotiated perhaps a dozen times, always quietly, always between people whose names never appear in any account of it, and it holds because both sides regard the alternative as unthinkable. Countless ranks of engineers work down here, and what they are doing is not maintenance in the way you would understand the word. They are performing rites. The machine spirits of the vessel's heart must be appeased, and that is not a metaphor to anybody aboard, including the parts of the crew who have never given it a moment's thought. The engines run. The rites are said. Nobody has ever proposed an experiment to determine the relationship between those two facts, and nobody ever will. What strikes you every time is how unhurried it all is. You had expected, before you ever came down here, when you were 19 and had ideas, something frantic, machinery that needed wrestling with. Instead, it is closer to a service, people moving at a deliberate pace between stations, saying the words, applying the oils, marking the slates, in an order that has not changed in living memory. The most powerful object aboard the ship is tended the way you would tend a very old animal that you love and do not entirely control. And once you have seen it, you cannot really see it any other way again. At the center of it are the plasma drives, and they are the reason for everything else. The drivemaster holds them as a fiefdom, and that is close to the literal arrangement. None but the Mechanicus and their own servants are welcome at the heart of it, and the captain of this vessel would send a request rather than an order. You do not go all the way in. Nobody on the night watch has ever gone all the way in. You stand at the gantry rail at the outer limit and you look, because everybody does. You met a drivemaster once, properly, at a funeral, and had a conversation of about 4 minutes that you still think about. She was perfectly pleasant and answered everything you asked. And you came away with the very clear impression that she regarded this ship as the thing that mattered, and the 26,000 people inside it as a complication she had made peace with. That is not cruelty either. It is a different arrangement of priorities, and given what she is responsible for, it may well be the correct one. And you have never managed to decide. Between the drives and everything else are the heat exchange decks, which is where the enginarium's waste goes to become somebody else's problem. It is unbelievably loud down here, and the noise is at a frequency that stops being sound and becomes a physical fact about the corridor. The crews who work it wear ear defense that has been repaired more times than it was ever meant to be, and they communicate entirely in a hand language that is completely opaque to everybody else aboard, and that their children learn before they learn to speak. It is a real language. Somebody could write it down. Nobody ever has. Their children are, without exception, bilingual in a way that has no name. They speak Low Gothic like everybody else, and they sign fluently from before they can walk, and they switch between the two without appearing to notice they have done it. There are perhaps 200 people alive who use that language, all of them aboard this vessel, all related to each other in some degree, and it has been developing quietly for a very long time. If this ship were ever lost, the language would go with it. There is no record of it anywhere, and nobody outside the exchange decks has ever thought about that once. And it is beautiful, in a way that has nothing to do with anything anybody intended. A structure the size of a cathedral, burning steadily, holding a fire that has not gone out in 3,000 years, and it is doing so about 40 meters from where you are standing with a lamp and a clipboard. The heat comes off it in a wall. You stand there for a minute longer than the route requires. You do this every single watch, and you have never once mentioned it to anybody. There is no railing in the world that makes 40 meters from a plasma core feel like enough distance. And yet, within about a minute, your body accepts it, which tells you something uncomfortable about how adaptable people are. The heat is the part that does not normalize. It arrives as a physical pressure on the exposed skin of your face and hands, constant, with no variation at all. And when you turn to leave and it comes off your back instead, the change is so abrupt it feels like stepping through a door. You do it every watch. Your body is still surprised every watch. There are servitors everywhere down here, and you stopped noticing them years ago, which is a thing you occasionally feel bad about at 4 in the morning. Lobotomized, wired into their stations, doing one task on a loop, tended by the tech adepts the way you would tend a tool. They move about their business alongside the menial crew and the guilders and everybody else, and the whole ship is arranged so that the two categories never quite have to look at each other properly. There is a rule aboard, unwritten as all the important ones are, that you do not look at a servitor's face. Not out of squeamishness. It is closer to courtesy, extended in a direction where courtesy has no possible recipient, by people who have decided it costs nothing to behave as though it might. Nobody would ever say this out loud, and if you asked around the mess about it, everybody would deny there was any such rule, and every single person aboard follows it without exception, including the tech adepts, who taught it to everybody else in the first place. Down past the water reclamation is the recyc plant, and it is the part of the ship that nobody visits voluntarily, and everybody depends on, absolutely. Every scrap of organic matter aboard ends up here. Everything. There is no polite way to describe a closed system, and the crew do not attempt one. They call it what it is, and they make jokes about it that would appall a planet-sider. And the jokes are a way of handling something that is genuinely difficult to sit with if you look at it directly for too long. The people who work recyc are the only crew aboard who are, very slightly, avoided. It is not fair. Everybody knows it is not fair, including the people doing the avoiding, and it happens anyway, and the recyc crews have their own mess table by long custom and appear to prefer it that way. The plant itself is enormous and warm and hums at a different pitch from everything else, and your route takes you along a gallery above it where you can see the whole floor and are not required to go down, then across and out toward the gun decks, and the character of the ship changes again. These are lightless, not dim, lightless by design, because there is nothing down here that needs looking at between actions, and the power is better spent elsewhere. You go through them with your lamp, and it reaches about 9 meters and then stops, and beyond that there is simply the knowledge of enormous shapes. Your lamp is not much help, and it is not really for seeing by, it is for being seen, so that anybody down here on their own business knows a watch is coming through and does not get a surprise. The gun decks are the one part of the route where you make noise on purpose. You let your boots come down properly. You clip the lamp against the rail at the top of each companionway twice, the way you were taught by somebody who was taught by somebody. It is not a regulation. It is not in the list. Everybody who walks nights does it, and nobody has ever written it down. The armoury is sealed, and your route only takes you past its outer door, which you test and log. It is a heavy door. Behind it is enough small arms to equip a considerable portion of the crew, and the reason it is sealed is not that anybody expects trouble from outside. Everybody aboard understands this, and nobody articulates it. 26,000 people in a closed metal environment for decades at a time is an arrangement with a certain number of ways it can go wrong, and the ship's answer to all of them is the same: a door, a seal, a log entry every watch, and a complete refusal to discuss the matter further. There is a second seal on that door, and it is not the ship's. It belongs to the ecclesiarchy, notionally, though in practice that means a chaplain who checks it once a month and has done for as long as anybody remembers. 2 authorities, 2 seals, 1 door, and the arrangement means opening it requires both parties to agree, which, given how rarely those 2 parts of the Imperium agree about anything, is generally understood aboard to be the actual point of the design, rather than an unfortunate side effect of it. Life on the gun decks is measured in shells loaded and bodies spent. That is not a grim exaggeration for effect. It is close to how the people who work them describe it themselves, without any particular drama. In action, this space is the worst place on the vessel by a considerable margin. Tonight, it is the quietest, and the 2 facts sit side by side in your head without arguing, the way they do for everybody who has walked this route enough times. The people who serve these guns are a specific kind, and everybody aboard knows it, and nobody says it unkindly. They keep to themselves. They have their own arrangements about almost everything. There is a shrine down here that no chaplain has ever consecrated, and the chaplains have wisely never raised the matter. And in an action, when the rest of the vessel is a series of alarms and shut hatches and rumors, this deck is 100 people doing something appalling with complete competence in the dark, and everybody upstairs owes them in a currency that has never once been mentioned. There are gunners asleep down here anyway, not many, a few who have decided over years that they would rather bunk beside their piece than 4 decks up with everybody else, and nobody stops them, and the arrangement is quietly understood to be about something other than convenience. Your lamp finds a hammock slung between 2 loading rails, and you move the beam off it before it reaches anybody's face, and you keep walking. It is against 3 separate standing orders, and it has never once been enforced. There is presumably a version of the Imperial Navy somewhere in which an officer would make an issue of it, and that officer would find that a great many small things aboard stopped working smoothly at the same time, for reasons nobody could quite identify. Ships this old run on 10,000 accommodations exactly like this one, and the good officers learn to see them and say nothing, and the ones who do not learn it tend to be transferred, and nobody ever quite explains why. The brig is on this deck, and it is almost always empty. 6 cells. Tonight, one is occupied, and you check the hatch and log it, and do not look in, because there is nothing to be gained by looking in, and the person in there has to eat in the mess again next week. Discipline aboard is mostly not a matter of cells. It is a matter of everybody knowing everybody forever, with no possibility of moving away, which turns out to be a far more effective constraint than any punishment the Navy has ever devised. The cells are for the rare cases where that has already failed. Almost every occupant of those cells is in for the same thing, and it is not theft or violence. It is a variety of failing to cope. Long transits do that. Somewhere around the 7th week of 11, a certain number of people every single voyage stop being able to manage, and it comes out as a fight or a refusal or something broken. And the ship's answer is 3 days in a cell and a conversation, and then it is never mentioned again by anybody at all. It is handled the way you would handle an illness. Everybody aboard has watched it happen to somebody, and a great many have felt the edge of it themselves. Coming back up, the route takes you through sections that are not used. Every ship this old has them. Compartments that were something once, sealed when the requirement went away, and never reopened because reopening them would require somebody to decide who owns them now. The lumens in these stretches were switched off a long time ago. Your lamp is the only light that has been in some of these corridors in a decade. What was in them, mostly, is not mysterious at all. Storage requirements that changed. A gunnery arrangement replaced 2 refits ago. Quarters for a category of specialist this vessel no longer carries. The dull answer is almost always the true one, and the ship's own records would confirm it if the records were indexed in any way a living person could use. That is the actual situation. Not secrets, but a filing problem 4,000 years deep, which from the inside is completely indistinguishable from a secret and gets treated exactly the same way. Nobody aboard is frightened of these sections exactly. The void-born crew are matter-of-fact about them in a way that outsiders find unsettling. They simply have rules about which ones you walk through and which ones you go around, and they will not explain the rules, and when pressed, they will look at you as though you had asked why water is wet. Your route goes around 2 of them. You have never asked why. After 7 years, it would be a strange thing to start asking. If you press hard enough, and you have, once, with somebody who had known you for 15 years and had drink taken, you will get something. Not an explanation, a story told flatly about a compartment on a different vessel and something that happened to somebody's grandmother's watch. It will not be very frightening. It will not contain anything you could act on, and the person telling it will make it extremely clear, without saying so, that the conversation is now finished and will not be reopened, and it never is. Up through the spine of the ship, and near the top, there is the Navigator's domain, which you do not enter and have never seen. It is sealed. It has its own entrance, its own staff, its own arrangements with the captain, and the person inside it is looking at something through a third eye that would destroy your mind in about 9 seconds. You pass the outer door on your route. It is quiet. It is always quiet. Whatever is happening on the other side of it does not make a sound. The staff who serve that section are not really part of the ship's company. They eat at their own hours, in their own space, and the arrangement predates everybody. You have seen them in a corridor perhaps a dozen times in 23 years. They are perfectly civil. They are also completely uninterested in you in a way that is not rudeness, but something more like distance. The manner of people whose actual working life happens somewhere the rest of the crew has no access to, and who long ago stopped trying to build a bridge for the sake of politeness. High in the spine, near the Navigator's section, but on the other side of a bulkhead from it, is the ship's librarium. It is bigger than it needs to be, and much emptier than it looks. Racks of bound volumes and data slates, most of them technical, a great many of them concerning systems this vessel no longer carries. There is a librarian, singular, whose post has existed continuously, for longer than the imperial calendar has been reliable, and who is engaged in a cataloging project that was begun some centuries ago, and is not substantially closer to completion. He is not idle. The task is simply larger than a life, and everybody involved has always known that, and the work continues anyway. There is one shelf in there that is different, and the librarian will show it to you if you seem genuinely interested. It holds the personal accounts, journals mostly, left aboard by people who died aboard, going back an unreasonable distance. Nobody cataloged them deliberately. They simply arrived, one at a time, across centuries, because there was nowhere else for them to go, and disposing of them was unthinkable. They are the only honest record of what life on this vessel has actually been like. They are in about 9 different hands and 4 dialects, and precisely nobody has ever read them all. And beyond the hull, on the other side of maybe 4 meters of adamantium, is the warp, not space. The ship is not in space at the moment. It is somewhere else entirely, inside a bubble of ordinary reality that a machine somewhere below you is holding shut. And if that machine stopped, everybody aboard would have about as long as it takes to understand what had happened. Nobody talks about this. Everybody knows it. It is simply the condition of being aboard. It is genuinely strange when you think about it directly, which almost nobody does. Not the danger, the proximity. There are people asleep tonight 2 meters from the inner hull, and on the other side of that hull is not vacuum, not distance, not anything with a measure attached to it, but a place that does not have rules the way your body understands rules. 4 meters of adamantium and a field, and within about a week of coming aboard, every single person stops thinking about it permanently, because the alternative is not survivable as a way to live. There is a corridor that runs along the inside of the outer hull, and it is the strangest place on your route. It exists for inspection. Somebody has to be able to reach the skin of the ship, and it is narrow and cold, and the bulkhead on one side is the last solid thing between the vessel and whatever is outside it tonight. It is noticeably colder than anywhere else. Frost forms on the deck seams in patches, and the ship's own moisture freezes on the plating. Your lamp shows rivets going away in a line for 200 meters, and you walk it, all of it, checking the seams as you go, with your shoulder about 1.5 meters from the warp. And after the first year, you stop thinking about that, and after about the 5th year, you start thinking about it again, differently, and you have never worked out what changed. There is one viewport on your route, only one, and it is not really for looking through. It is a maintenance inspection port with an armor glass panel in the hatch. During transit, the shutter stays down. You have looked twice in 7 years, both times early on, both times when you were still curious, and you are not going to do it again, and you have never been able to describe to anybody exactly why not. What you can say is that it was not frightening in the moment. That is the part that took years to make sense of. It was not frightening at the time, and it was extremely frightening about 4 hours later, in your bunk, and again a week after that, and then it settled into something that is not fear, and is not memory, and does not have a name. The shutter is dogged shut, and there is a wire seal on it now, and you have never once been tempted since, and you do not think about it during the walk, and you have absolutely never recommended it to anybody. Further up, the astropathic chambers, and this is another place you pass rather than enter. The astropaths are how the ship talks to anybody at all, and what that costs them is not something the rest of the crew dwells on. The corridor outside their section has a particular quality that everybody notices, and nobody has words for. You walk it slightly faster than the rest of the route. So does every other person on watch. Nobody has ever discussed it. They are how the ship exists at all as far as the rest of the Imperium is concerned. Without them, this vessel is a rumor. No orders, no reports, no contact of any kind with anything for months at a stretch. What passes through that section keeps 26,000 people connected to the species they belong to, and the cost of it is paid entirely by a handful of people behind a warded door who did not exactly volunteer, and everybody aboard has decided, collectively and without discussion, to be grateful in a general direction and not to inquire further. The cargo holds are the emptiest places aboard, and the only spaces on the vessel where you lose your sense of scale entirely. They are enormous. A hold can be 100 meters across and 40 high, and on the outbound leg of a transit they are mostly full, and on the return they are mostly not. And right now they are somewhere in between. Your lamp does not reach the far wall. It does not reach the ceiling. What you get instead is a sense of volume, of standing at the bottom of something with a lot of air in it, and the echo of your own boots coming back after a delay that is slightly too long to be comfortable. Crates are lashed in blocks with lanes between them, and the lanes are wide enough to drive a hauler down. The whole space is at a lower temperature than the rest of the ship to keep the cargo happy, and there is a permanent faint mist near the deck. You walk the main lane end to end, and it takes 11 minutes, and it is the only part of the route where you occasionally sing. And then the bridge, right at the end of the route, and it is the only place on the ship where the night watch feels like ceremony. It is enormous and vaulted, and mostly dark at this hour, and there are perhaps 15 people in a space built for 200. Nobody is doing anything urgent. A duty officer is reading. Somebody is entering figures into a ledger by hand. The vessel is being steered by 4 people and a navigator you will never meet. And that is all it takes on a quiet night to move a town between stars. And the size of it is the joke that everybody makes and nobody tires of. 200 stations built for a footing the Navy has not put aboard a vessel of this class in 800 years. So 90% of the bridge is furniture. There are consoles up there that have not been powered since before the current dynasty. Somebody keeps them dusted. The duty officer's chair is not the command throne. Nobody sits in the command throne on a night watch. That would be absurd. It is a perfectly ordinary chair, positioned so that the occupant can see everything that is actually lit. Off the bridge is a compartment that holds the ship's honors, and you pass its open door on the way back. Battle standards in cases. A shell casing from something that happened 900 years ago, polished by generations of hands that were not there. Plates on the wall with names on them. More names than you can read at a walking pace, going back and back. The vessel has been in more actions than anybody aboard could list, and the overwhelming majority of them are not remembered by anyone, anywhere, except in this one small room that the night watch passes at 3 in the morning. What is not in that room is any account of why. The plates give a name, a date, and a place, and that is the entire entry. And the reasons those actions were fought have gone wherever reasons go. Some of them will have been strategically vital. Some will have been mistakes. The room does not distinguish between the two, and could not, and the effect of standing in it at 3 in the morning is not pride exactly. It is closer to standing in a graveyard where you cannot read the inscriptions, knowing somebody meant every one of them very seriously indeed. You report. It takes about 40 seconds. Nothing to report is itself the report, and it is entered into a ledger that will be kept aboard this vessel for as long as the vessel exists, and will never be read by anybody. There is something in that which used to bother you and stopped bothering you somewhere around the 4th year. The ledger is not for reading. It is for having been written. The ledger itself is a physical object of some importance, more than anybody would admit. It is bound. It is enormous. It goes back further than the current volume by a long way, and the earlier volumes are somewhere aboard in a compartment with a proper seal on it. Every person who has walked this route for 3,000 years has signed one, and the signatures run back through hands that shaped their letters differently, in inks that have changed color, in a language that has drifted. Nothing in it says anything. All of it says that somebody was here and looked, and it was fine. And then you walk back, and the walk back is the best part, and everybody on the night watch agrees. Nothing is required of you now. The route is done, the ledger is signed, and there is half an hour between here and your bunk with nothing in it at all. You take the long way. Everybody takes the long way. It is the only half hour in a 40-year career that belongs entirely to you, and there are people who have been doing it for decades. There are unofficial routes for it, and everybody has their own, and they are never discussed. Yours goes up through a maintenance stair that has no business being on anybody's path, and comes out on a gallery above the aft transit hall, which at this hour is completely empty and about 80 meters long and lit by exactly 4 lumens. You stand there for a while most watches. There is nothing to see. That is not the reason you go, and if anybody ever asked you why, you would say something about it being quicker, and it is not quicker, and they would know that. Somewhere on the way back, you will cross a shift change, and it is the only time the ship is properly busy at this hour. 2,000 people moving in opposite directions through corridors built for considerably fewer, in almost complete silence, because everybody is either just awake or just finished, and neither state produces conversation. It takes about 11 minutes. And then it is over, and the corridors are empty again. If you have timed your walk badly, you stand aside in a doorway and let it go past, and it is one of the few moments aboard when the sheer number of people on this vessel stops being an abstraction. What gets you is how quiet 2,000 people can be. There is no talking. There is the sound of boots and hatches, and that is all of it, and it goes on for 11 minutes and then stops. Somebody described it to you once as the ship breathing, and you have never been able to unhear it since. Twice a cycle, every cycle, for 3,000 years, the vessel moves 2,000 people from one place to another in near silence, and then goes quiet again, and almost nobody aboard has ever stood still and watched it happen, because almost everybody aboard is in it. The ship at this hour is as quiet as it ever gets, which is not quiet at all, and after a while you can hear the individual parts of it, the drives underneath everything, the air moving, water somewhere, a hatch cycling 4 decks away, somebody's cough, all of it arriving through metal, slightly changed by the distance, and all of it completely familiar, and the total effect is not loneliness. It is the opposite of that, and there is no good word for it in any language anybody aboard speaks. Every ship sounds different, and crews can tell them apart. Move somebody to another vessel of the same class, built in the same yards to the same pattern, and they will lie awake for weeks because the note is wrong. Not louder or quieter, just not theirs. There are people aboard who have transferred 3 times in a career and describe each ship's sound the way you would describe a face. It is the single most reliable way to identify a genuine voidborn, and it is completely useless as a test because they will simply tell you it sounds normal and change the subject. And everybody is asleep. That is the thought that comes at this point in the walk every single time, and it never gets old. Tens of thousands of people on every deck above and below you, in bunks and hammocks and family compartments, asleep at the same time, while a machine holds reality open around them, and 4 people on a bridge somewhere keep the whole thing pointed in the right direction. They are all fine. You checked. That was the job. It is also, if you let it be, the only part of the job that is unambiguously good. Not important. The ship would be perfectly fine tonight without a night watch, and everybody, including you, knows that. But somebody walked the whole thing and looked at all of it, and now knows for a fact that every one of those people is all right. Nobody will thank you. Nobody will read the entry. 26,000 people will wake up tomorrow having no idea you passed their compartment door at 2 in the morning and checked. That is the shape of most of the good that gets done anywhere, and it is a reasonable way to spend a life. Your relief passes you somewhere around the 9th deck, going the other way, starting the same route in the opposite direction. You nod, they nod. Occasionally, one of you says something about the temperature down in the enginarium, which is always the same, and which is not really about the temperature. Then they carry on, and their lamp goes away down the corridor behind you, and the watch continues without you in it. You have handed over to the same person for 9 years, and you know almost nothing about them. Their name, their deck, the fact that they have a bad knee in the cold sections. That is the whole file. And yet, if you did not pass them on the 9th deck at the expected hour, you would go looking immediately, without hesitating, and so would they. And neither of you has ever said so, or ever will. There are a great many relationships aboard a ship like this that consist entirely of a nod in a corridor, and would extend instantly and without discussion to walking into a fire. And your bunk is exactly where you left it, which is the entire point of the exercise. 60 people breathing in a metal room. Boots off by feel in the dark. The drives coming up through the frame of the bed, the way they have every night of your life aboard, and every night of your father's life aboard, and his mother's before that. You are not going anywhere. Neither is anybody else. The ship is between stars, and it will be for another 11 weeks. And nothing whatsoever is going to happen. And in 11 weeks, the ship will come out of the warp somewhere, and there will be a week of noise and work and unfamiliar sky and cargo moving, and then it will fold itself back into the dark, and everything will resume exactly as it was. That is the rhythm of the whole life. Long, quiet stretches, and short, loud ones. And it is the long, quiet ones where the living actually gets done, even though it is only ever the loud ones that anybody writes down. Your boots go under the frame where they always go. The blanket is where you left it, still slightly warm from the compartment rather than from you. Somebody further down turns over. So that is the watch. It will happen again tomorrow and the day after, and it has been happening on this vessel every single cycle for 3,000 years. Walked by people whose names are in a ledger nobody reads, checking on a ship where nothing is wrong. Let it carry on without you. The drives are steady. Everybody is asleep. The ship is exactly where it should be, moving quietly through the dark. And so are you. Sleep well. There is one more thing, and then I will leave you alone. Nobody on that ship is going anywhere tonight, and neither are you. And that is not a small thing to be able to say. The drives are steady, the hatches are closed, the water is accounted for, and the air is moving, and 26,000 people are asleep in the dark between stars, with something enormous and patient humming underneath them. It has been like that for 3,000 years. It will be like that tomorrow. Let go of the walk. Let go of the ship. Let it carry on without you. Nothing is going to happen tonight. Sleep well.